Hey guys, this is Brittany.
And this is Jen.
And today in the Village, we're going to talk about our top 10 tips on how to start a homeschool co-op.
Music. This is why we don't teach music to our children.
Hi guys, welcome to the Village. Let's talk about homeschool co-ops. You know, it's our thing.
We have some good tips for you to hopefully help you start a co-op yourself.
Yeah, we like lists. So
Top 10 list.
Yeah, and we will put anything in a list. So today's our list day. It's our top 10 tips on homeschool co-ops.
All right, so our first tip is, it's kind of obvious, but set a goal.
Yeah, like I feel like the goal could just be start a homeschool co-op.
Yeah.
But why? Why are we doing this? We've talked about this, but what is your reason?
Yeah, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah.
Or is it, enrichment? Are we trying to replace public school? Mm-hmm. Are you just trying to make some friends?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. So what's your purpose? Why are you starting this co-op? What's the goal going to be?
So that one's short and sweet. Not much to that. It's an easy one to start with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with number 2 now. Start small.
Yeah. I think sometimes, especially if you're somebody who may have belonged to a co-op you didn't start, or you've seen it online, that beautiful world of Instagram, right? Where everything's shiny and pretty and has a filter on it. And you look and you're like, wow, there's all these families. They're in this church complex with 4 different buildings. They're offering 6 periods of classes twice a week. They're doing SAT prep. They have a prom. You're like, okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. You don't do that
out the door.
Yeah. You don't go homeschool co-op on Monday and start that on Tuesday.
Yeah, it doesn't materialize like that. You have to start kind of small, all right? It might just start with just a few of you and your other friends you made at the playground, or, other teachers.
Yep.
And it might just start like, hey, let's hang out in our living room and figure out what we're going to teach. Or,
let's have movie nights.
Yeah. Wednesday we go to the playground.
Start small, start easy. Make sure your kids get along.
Yeah. And then our next tip would be to network. Number 3.
Yeah. Oh, the networking phrase. It's like such a network. Get out there, meet people, mingle, woo. But it's super important. I think, and I'm going to just say this, the people who started the homeschool group that we now lead, which, as we have said, that's not us. We didn't start this group. I think one of them put out a post on Facebook. I think she just was like, hey, my kids, they have friends at church. My kids, they have some neighborhood friends. We need friends that aren't always like us, and we're interested in starting an inclusive homeschool co-op. And she put that out there into the social media universe, and people responded.
Yeah, I actually found them through an email, through an online homeschoolers of the area I live in. So I got an email from them because I don't like social media.
No, Jen's not a social media person.
Yeah, so networking is difficult for me to even say this. I'm like, going out on a limb here. But yeah, it is important because obviously you can't have a group without other people. Yeah,
right.
Me and my one child, we're not a great community together. So yeah, you have to network. You have to go out. You got to go do stuff.
We say with love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's like, it's always do I really want to put on pants for this? But
never.
No, right. But yeah, it's like, okay, I see somebody posting, and of course it's always kind of cyclical. Homeschoolers, we fall prey to the same life cycles as everybody. Start of the academic year, you're going to see those homeschool meetups in August and September because everybody wants that to make some friends, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to sometimes go and do those events.
That's true. Like that's how I kind of got started. I started, like I said, the library group I've done. There was a lot of homeschoolers in that. And then I started going to things that were, like we did it like a corn maze for homeschoolers, because it was off hours, regular kids couldn't go to. So they would have special ones just for homeschoolers. Yeah.
Not our weirdos. Yeah. No.
Sorry, that came off wrong.
No. It's we always, our homeschoolers like to go to things with traditional public school hours, maybe. So yeah,
mainstream.
Yeah. So you have to put yourself out there, which is really hard for adults and some kids, and then just kind of asking around. It's so funny when the pandemic started. Part of actually how we came up with our name was it was like, oh, everybody and their mother was calling up the local village homeschooler, right? Mm-hmm. Like they were like, our kids are home all the time. Oh my gosh, this isn't working. What do I do? And they would call up the one person they knew in their town who is always home with their kids.
Yeah.
So if you're new to this whole bag, sometimes that's what you need to do. Call that village homeschooler up. Call that person you know who homeschools, who's in your dance classes with your kids, or in your that you met at church or something like that, and see what they do. Where do they go? How do they meet friends? Do they know people? Homeschoolers, I find, are a friendly bunch, and we're eager to connect people most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Most of the time. We'll answer lots of questions, sometimes overshare. It's a whole thing. So yeah, reach out and talk to your village homeschooler. See what they're doing and where they're going, because there's a whole world out there, if you're new to this, that you may not have been aware of.
After you find some people that you can kind of network in, then our next tip is just to get to know each other as parents. Go out, hang out with these people, see if you kind of work well together, because there's going to be people that you're going to find maybe just don't click with, and maybe you might not want to start, maybe this is the person I just want to hang out with and not plan classes with 4 times a week or whatever. Right. And that's actually important too. It's just like get to know people's strengths and weaknesses and what works. And, are these people that you are willing to work with, you want to work with, capable of working with? Right.
And I think, when you're talking about a community, everybody in the community is going to bring something different to the table. And we don't need to we could spend hours talking about this, but everybody's going to bring something different. And so you need to get along with them, but you also need to know, like, hey, that person's a really, really awesome organizer. Like their house, they've got everything labeled, they've got it organized, they have a routine. And, I may be a real creative free spirit. I'm not, but let's just pretend. Because I like to pretend I am. I'm a real creative free spirit, and I am super cool. And we have a lovely mom in our co-op who, this is her. Like, she's the person who you can send your kids over there and they are going to splatter paint. They're going to come home filthy. They're going to come home with so much artwork, and they're going to come home so filled with joy. And she's cool with it. She's cool with these huge, messy, crazy art projects. She's that mom. I'm not that mom. Jen's not that mom. No. So you want to make sure that the people you're going into community with have other strengths that you may not have.
Exactly. And, some people are just natural teachers. I think Brittany is, even though she's a leader, she's also really good at teaching.
Certain kids connect with certain people and certain educational styles and certain parenting approaches. And I have seen often where a parent is just struggling to reach a child or to get through with a child or to handle a situation with a child. And if there's another person around who the community trusts to step in and be like, hey, Bob, I need to come over here and talk to you. Your mom needs a break right now. They can maybe sometimes reach that child in a different way that you as a parent weren't able to. So when you're out there mingling and meeting people and networking, that's something to think about. Like, what are we all bringing into the table here?
Yeah. What is your little part in this little village we're making? Because not everybody is a natural leader, and not everybody should be leading, or not everybody should be teaching. Like, I felt like our other leader as well, we felt like leading was easier for us than it was to teach. So we would much rather spend all of our extra time leading than a couple months of teaching.
Well, and then like I said, I wasn't the artistic person. I'm also not the money person. Again, we can talk about money all day long. I know it's not everyone's favorite subject. It's the one that makes me want to cringe, but we have to deal with money. People pay for classes. We collect funds. We collect field trip fees. Somebody's got to do that. Who's comfortable doing that? Make sure there's that person in your group, in your village, because we need them, So
just as important as teachers or anything else. Like there's probably a place for you. You just gotta kind of figure it out.
Right. And find those other people who are willing to fit together like those puzzle pieces and make that cohesive picture.
Now, that being said, our next tip is also watch and get to know the kids, because knowing the kids is just as important as knowing the adults, because what do the kids need?
Yeah. Well, and that really kind of comes down to what kind of group you're doing too, right? Because most of our toddlers are not like ready for Latin.
Yeah.
I know that some people teach little ones Latin. That's cool. Mine were, we were still working on, please don't push your friends when you're outside, when we were at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or when I say stop running into the street, please stop running into the street. So my kids were just we were looking for social skills when they were little. That's what we were focusing on. And so I would have been, when I just had little ones, looking for a play group.
Yeah. So if you're somebody looking for a very structured, organized thing, and then you find some other parents that their kids aren't looking for that as a parent, and your kids don't need something like that. They don't need structure. They want something loose and relaxed, because maybe during the week you do the structure thing, and now they just want like a free day, because that's kind of what I do. So I'm very structured during the week, but on Fridays it's like, hey, we don't have to do schoolwork. We go and do art class, or we go and whatever, hang out with our friends and take field trips. So that's what works for us, and that's what works for my child. You have to like see what works for the kids too, and you know, you kind of have to just kind of get to know everybody in the group. It's important.
And then I think, you know, there's a huge variety when it comes to educational approaches, when it comes to where kids are in skill levels, and that's even like, there's always the joke, like, don't ask a homeschooler what grade they're in because they don't know. But really that's because like you have kids who are like reading at a high school level when they're 8, but their math skills just may be at a different place in their life. And that's okay. You know, as homeschoolers, we're often much more comfortable with that than other people, but you're going to have a variety when you put homeschoolers together, kids at different academic levels.
Yeah. So like as a teacher one time, one of my big failures was I was teaching a forensics class, and I was assuming that all the kids had a certain skill level because of just by their age, which is such, you know, you do that, and I should know better because I'm a homeschooler myself, is that, no, not all the kids were on the same level. Not all the kids could write quickly or read quickly or do everything at the same level. So you have to be flexible with the kids, and you have to have people that are willing to be flexible with the children.
Right.
So.
Right. And kind of, I think, like Jen brought up, like, we're homeschoolers, but you know, we still live in a world that has a lot of social norms, even though sometimes we try to fight those off a little bit. And so we fall prey to the idea of age-based education or something like that. And just being able to say like, oh yeah, actually, you know, I want to teach this skill to this group of kids, but how can I do it in a way that meets the needs of a bunch of different writing levels, math levels, those kinds of things. So yeah, that's why it's sometimes a good that, tip 5, watch the kids, take a step back and just observe the children together and see what they need.
Okay. So our next tip would be just location.
Oh, location.
Which this has also been kind of a struggle for us. We have gone to lots of locations, and we've had a lot of failures here, but I think
learning experiences.
Yes, I think we finally found our ideal location.
There's never a perfect location.
There isn't. It's taken a while, but you know, there's lots of places you can do co-ops. You can do it outside if the weather's agreeable, but you know, where we live in New England, it's not always agreeable.
Currently 20-something degrees outside, and there's a foot of snow on the ground.
Yeah, so I would not be teaching outside unless we were doing some kind of nature class.
Well, even then, you better not be anything you want to grow.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it can be done outside. You know, sometimes we do things in people's houses, like, hey, we're going to go over Brittany's house and do something in the basement, or we're going to go over this person's house and do something in the garden. We were kind of lucky that we were able to do stuff at the extension center through a 4-H, but we were shoving a lot of children in a very, very tiny space, and it was so overwhelming. My child was coming home on Fridays, and as much as he loved it when he was there afterwards, he was so drained because there's so much noise and so much happening around him. It was just was not ideal.
Right.
So you have to really kind of keep trying for better locations. Now we're in a church, and it's much bigger, and there's separate rooms, and we could store all our stuff, so it's much better, but it took some time. Yeah,
so just look what's around you, and look what you're looking to do. Are we looking to do a nature-based playgroup? Because then great, we don't need to worry so much about location. Are we going to be small? Are we going to stay small? And I think that's probably what happened to our group. They started out small, and whoop, grow. All of a sudden we're overflowing.
And that 20 by 60 conference room, which was great in the beginning, was not great when we had, 80 kids in there.
Right. And so it became an issue. So, we have a really great place now. It works really well for us. It has storage space, all these things. It took a while. Sometimes organizations are loath to bring homeschoolers in. Sometimes they're eager to. Sometimes it costs money. Sometimes they're willing to do it for a donation or community service. Just look at what's around you and see what's available. And before you get too far, think about where you want to be, because location was a big growing pain for our group. And it was a good growing pain because we ended up in a great place with great storage and great people. And we're super happy with where we are, but
expect to try a lot of places first.
Yes.
Call around, call the churches, call the community centers. Just ask around because it is hard to find a location sometimes.
Right. Right. And to some extent, COVID has complicated that depending on the building's COVID protocols. If you're going to be renting a space, insurance, we just happened, interestingly enough, the things you learned because of COVID, we learned that we were told that our insurance for our group does not cover viral transmission. It never did. Yeah. So we had to make everybody aware of that if you were to come to a co-op meeting and you were to catch not just COVID, but
the flu, anything,
you can't sue us. So, these are all things that you have to kind of play into account. And a lot of times with the buildings, especially after COVID, but even before COVID, they're asking, do you carry insurance? Something like that. So again, look at the laws in your state, look at the area you're in and see what's out there.
Great. So our next one is just reevaluate. All right. What is working? What isn't working? What do we need to try again? We've had a lot of failures that we've had to be like, let's try this again.
Yeah. Or step back. Wait a minute. What happened here?
Yeah. We had a lot of those.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many because human beings are unpredictable. Little human beings are even more unpredictable. And so, you just kind of do all these things and you go, oh, this was not how I thought this was going to go. I do think you have to be gentle with yourself and not carry too much emotion into those situations. I think you have to be like, well, that didn't work. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. That doesn't mean I'm a bad teacher. That doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. That doesn't mean we're a bad co-op. That doesn't mean anybody around me didn't do the best they could. We just need to reevaluate what happened in this scenario. Location is a good example. Why is this location not working? And what can we do to make it work, or do we need to find someplace else?
Yeah. And also in this one, it's like, am I taking on too much responsibility? Because we found that the previous leaders of our co-op were burnout. And
they're amazing.
They
took way too much on.
Yes, exactly. And they were getting burnt out in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Within a year, they would be like, I can't do this anymore because they were leading and they were teaching and they were cleaning up and they were doing all these things.
And spending their own money.
And spending their own money. And it just wasn't working. So it's just, for us, it was a lot of like, this is not working. How do we take the load and spread it out? Mm-hmm. That was one of our, like, let's reevaluate how to make this more fair, more manageable. How do we make it so everybody's happy, not just, a couple of people, or everybody's capable of taking on our job once we leave? Because I don't want to make it so that Brittany is never replaceable. She's wonderful and I don't want to replace her. But
eventually I can't. I'm going to want to move on. Oh, my kids will grow up. Right?
Yeah, like we can't be like have our kids being like 40 and we're still running a co-op.
Hobble it in there. Here I go with my microphone.
And our grandkids. Yeah.
Well, hey, I have offered. My 10-year-old's like, oh, okay, Mom. Yeah. But no, exactly. You want to make sure you're doing something that's sustainable for you and for people coming behind you, because people move, they get older, they outgrow it. You may go back to public school. We don't know.
Yeah, actually, funny enough, a lot of our leaders that started the co-op aren't even in our co-op anymore.
It's actually funny. So we still have some original people.
Yeah.
And then we have people who have been with us a long time, but then we have new people too. It's a constantly...
Because life moves on and sometimes you have different needs sometimes. So you have to reevaluate what works for your group. And
previous leader of our co-op was really good. She would send out surveys to the whole co-op and, really look for ways to have constructive criticism and improve on what we were doing. And I admired that so much about her. I do admire that so much about her. She's still a dear friend, because that's really hard to be like, here, what am I doing wrong? Tell me what I'm doing wrong.
And in those early days, they were taking on a lot. So they were, it's hard to manage that much work all by yourself.
Right.
So there was a lot of people that had a lot of opinions. So props to you.
You know who you are. Yes. So I think that the value in that lesson is that we should be constantly seeking out constructive criticism and figuring out ways to improve, because it's never perfect. Next tip number 8 is
formalize some rules.
Oh yeah, I know. And gosh, man, homeschoolers, we're like not good rule followers. We don't like rules.
Well, I like rules.
Well, that's true. So, as I always tell people when I talk about rules, often when we do like co-op meetings, I'm the person who stands up and talks. And I always cringe when we talk about the rules, because I am a little oppositional. I just am. It's my personality. I think a lot of the homeschoolers are. We like, here, this is the rule. And then our immediate response is, but why?
Yeah. And there's a lot of I'm going to say I read the rules, but I didn't.
And I think that's just a personality that a lot of homeschoolers have. We're a little bit more alternative. We're a little bit more like, we left public schools, or we chose not to go to public schools because we don't want to follow a million different rules. And yeah, public schools need rules because there's a lot of kids and a lot of adults working in schools, and we get that. That's why we're not in them. So that's the kind of the reaction. But there is a place for rules.
Mm-hmm. And they're there for a reason. And at least in our co-op, we had to start setting rules to kind of spread out the workload.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them seem kind of silly, like cleaning up after co-ops and stuff like that. But they were put in place so that the workload is spread out. So whatever kind of works for your group, I would suggest putting it in writing.
Yeah.
So people know it and read it, and then you enforce it. So for us, it was like people, we had rules, and then people were like, I didn't know that was a rule. Well, now you have to sign that you read the rules. Now, I know still people are going, yeah, I read it, sure, and just signing at the end, but whatever, at least it's there.
Yes.
So when I say, hey, you didn't follow so-and-so rule, I can point to it in the literature there, or a little handbook.
A handbook or a website or wherever you're putting your rules. Yeah, writing them down is really important. And I think sometimes expectations, I feel like, and man, this is the podcast where we could talk for hours, but expectations, we have expectations of people who take on certain roles in our co-ops, teachers, people who are cleaning, people who are assisting, people who are helping, one-on-one with some of our kids, those kinds of things. And people like to know what the expectation is. No one wants to walk into a role and be like, what do you want me to do? And people go, whatever. We don't like to always boss people around, but sometimes people appreciate a little bit of bossing, gentle, loving bossing. And so
nudges,
little nudges, or they want to know what their role is. If my role is to clean up these 2 rooms after co-op, how do I do that? Where are the supplies? How long do I have to do it in? What does that need to look like? Defining the role, defining the expectation is actually very helpful, and it's actually very kind.
Yes. And also following through. You have to follow through. Mm-hmm. If you write something, then follow through on it, because then, what's the point?
Right. And, we can go back to a couple tips ago. When you reevaluate, there are rules you may outgrow.
Yes.
And you may go, we are reevaluating. This doesn't seem to be a problem for our group anymore. Do we feel like this is necessary to enforce, to keep writing? You can rewrite the rules as times go on. We've seen this with COVID. There's additional rules that have come into play in a lot of different communities. So,
okay. Another one is accept that things are going to fail. There's going to be bumps and bruises, and things are going to, this goes back to reevaluating and formalizing rules, everything. There's going to be things that don't work, and that's okay.
It's all right. Yeah. We did a gardening class once, and we were so excited about this class. And the teacher, who, if she is listening to this, was amazing.
Yes.
We love you. You know who you are. She was excited. We were excited. We had all these supplies. We had master gardeners coming to work with our kids. We thought this was going to be so awesome. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what happened.
Well, one was where we were going to garden. They said, no, you can't garden there. And that kind of put a big damper on
literally they had approved it, and then the building we were in, it was a whole thing.
And then they're like, don't pull that out. Don't pull out that plant. We're like,
but you told us to.
I don't know what we're going to do today, because our whole day was planned around pulling out that plant.
There was some logistical things that happened. There was some communication errors with the master gardeners. It had nothing to do with us. It had nothing to do with the teacher that was teaching it. She was fully prepared. It was just the biggest flop 8 weeks of that 8-week session that we were doing at the time. And it was such a bummer, because there was 12 kids signed up, ready to garden. I mean, they had rain suits.
Yeah.
They had gloves. They had pail. I mean, they were so ready. And all the other kids are doing astronomy and doing forensics and doing sewing. And these kids are out in the rain doing nothing, And they ended up playing. And man, the teacher, she pivoted so well. She got kits to make birdhouses and got kits to make flower pots. And they did stuff. And it was great. And it was a wonderful, she made the best of it. But did we do a lot of actual master gardener gardening?
Nope.
And
even the master gardener didn't show up. So,
oh my gosh, it was just,
it was a scheduling thing. Yeah,
it was just one of those things that happens. You are going to have things that flop. My astronomy poetry, according to Jen Flop.
No, that turned out well. I would say another thing that flopped pretty badly was when we decided, with my insistence, that we take out lunch. Now, I don't...
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. The kids don't. They still remember. And now, if you... If you know any homeschoolers, you would know that food is very important to them, and it's needs to be constant. You know, it's not like school kids where they're used to eating, say, before school, and then they have
we have
signed
like 4
lunch.
breakfasts.
Our kids are like, it's snack time now, and I need to eat every 30 minutes. So
She's
we're like
talking about my youngest child.
it was always like, Mom, I'm hungry, every time she was teaching class. Yeah, it was constant. The kids were pretty miserable, even though we were cutting out of classes really early to try to accommodate them.
I remember this now.
The reason we did it was because we had a ton of allergies and we were in a very small space. And so it was like, okay, well, we can all eat outside after we're done with our classes, or we can try to accommodate all these allergies. And then, the weather in New England isn't always accommodating for us. So one semester we did that and we never did it again.
Yeah, we just did morning classes and then we're going to go eat lunch at a park after. And I think we made it 3 weeks. And then we were like, we have to have a snack time.
Yeah.
These kids are going to mutiny. They were literally falling asleep on the table out of sheer fatigue.
And, in between classes, we always kind of do like hey, how did your day go? And, do you have any questions? And the kids were like, when do we get to eat?
That's all they could talk about. They were learning nothing.
Food.
Yeah. So, we've tried things that didn't work. We brought lunch back. It was really, we could talk about lunch and our co-op for hours too, but we had to take a vote on it. Remember, we had to vote to bring it back because it was highly controversial. Lunch was highly controversial. And oh man.
Well, it was a pain in the butt because we had such a small space. We had to put up all these warning signs and because of the food allergies.
The food allergy. And then there was cleaning because we had to really be careful about where we cleaned. And then kids were eating on top of art projects because we were in a small space at the time.
And they were eating in the room and then they were touching things. And
it was a whole thing. And so parents were really trying to minimize risk. And that was why we did it. And there were still people who didn't want to do lunch.
Yeah.
They were a minority, but they did. And there was some mixed feelings when we brought lunch back.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly didn't love lunch because I was teaching a forensics class and I had out microscope slides and microscopes.
Tuna sandwiches.
Over your microscope. Crumbs all over all my evidence.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was really highly controversial. And we really thought we'd solved it when we got rid of lunch. And we
did not. We just made it worse.
And so we brought it back.
Yeah. So that comes with our last tip here. It's just remain flexible. I mean, we have to. Bring back lunch if you have to.
Right. And I remember one time I walked into Coop, and this is before I was a leader, and I walked in and I made eye contact with one of the leaders at that time. And she looked at me and she goes, "This is that week." And I go, "What?" She goes, "This is that week where all the kids lose their minds." And there's always one, right? There's always 1 week where it's just going to be chaos. No one's listening. No one's really into whatever it doesn't matter what the activity is. It does not matter if these children have been handed amazing technology, amazing art supplies. They're just not digging it. All they want to do is wrestle in the grass and eat granola bars. And they're just kind of crazy. And that's going to happen. There's going to be some weeks. I think we walked out of in October. This was a couple months ago. It was our Halloween co-op event. And I was like, did we learn anything today? Our kids had a really good time.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We had a really good time. We were dancing, singing, doing the monster mash. I don't think we did any of our robotics.
Yeah, because I think the whole robotics day was spent making costumes.
Yeah.
Instead of doing robots.
Right.
And, whatever. It's fine.
And so that flexibility is super important because at the end of the day, that could have looked like a failure to us. But our kids were happy. We were happy. We have really funny pictures of our families celebrating, and it was good. It was a good thing. And so, that flexibility is going to happen. It also is really important to have flexibility with homeschool co-ops because, and look at COVID, we have to pivot. Oh, wait, no inside spaces available to us. Or,
well, one time, this is even before COVID, some kind of bug went through the entire co-op, and we had so many people call out one day that were like, we can't do class. I mean, all of our teachers are gone. Half the kids are out.
Everybody had this.
And people call out anyway. So you have to stay flexible and just realize that that's part of it.
And I think we just said, forget it. We're not doing it this day. I think it was one of the only times we ever canceled. Well, got locked out of a building one time. We got locked out of the building we were using and we just went home. Or went to the park or something.
Yes. We decided to do something else that day.
I'm sure. Yeah, we have a story.
Oh, one time I made the alarm go off because for some odd reason they give me the keys to the building, and I can never figure out the alarm.
And the police came.
The police came, and it scared.
We thought we had a gas leak one time in the kitchen of the church we were renting.
And the fire department came.
The fire department. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting thing leading a homeschool co-op, but you just have to remain flexible. There was one, and this was years ago, pre you and me leading. It was other people were leading, and we had a huge blizzard because we live in the Northeast. I lost power. I think a lot of us lost power, and we lost power on a Tuesday, and our co-op meets on Fridays, and we did not have power back by Thursday. So we didn't have access to print things for the kids' classes. We didn't have all this other stuff. We had one teacher who lost power and then had a power line down across her driveway, so much so that she could not leave her house. And she was like, I don't know if I'm coming on Friday, guys. I remember, and some people started to get power back on Thursday, and they were like, well, if you want to come here and take a shower, you can. We did a little bit of that. But it was like, are we going to actually have it? And then it was like Friday morning, and my power went back on, and I got up at 5 a.m. and took a shower, and I texted the leaders. I said, okay, I've got a shower. I'm coming. We can come. And we managed to pull it off. It was just the kid, people weren't doing their normal roles that day. Mm-hmm. Not every family was there, but
some people were a little more skanky.
Yeah, some people wore, extra deodorant. It was just a thing. But yeah, and you do laugh about it now. I totally forgot about getting rid of lunch until Jen mentioned it. And now it's really funny to me. I remember we literally called it the lunch controversy.
Oh God, it was awful.
So, there's our top 10 tips. We probably have more, so feel free to ask those in the comments, but and we can talk about it. But we did have one question from a viewer who is also a friend. We'll just be full disclosure here. And she said that, and she's a member of our co-op, but she asked that a lot of people ask her, and we have been asked this over the years, where do teachers and co-op leaders and people in co-ops come up with their class ideas? Where are they coming from? That's our question for the day.
Yeah, so a couple places. So 4-H in particular, it's supposed to be child-led education. So we like to actually ask the kids what they want to learn about. But the thing with kids is that once they take a class, particularly they love this art class we did one semester, and now they ask for it every semester. And we can't have that anymore because that one particular mom isn't in our co-op anymore, even though she was wonderful. So a lot of it is
that talented.
No, it was like needle felting. It's just, I can't do it. So yeah, a lot of it is kids, what they want to learn. And also like, what are the talents of the parents?
Right.
It's obviously, Brittany, she can teach astronomy, but she's much better at poetry. I can teach, but I'm much better at not teaching. So
Jen's more of our science personality, which
but like my husband, he's an engineer, so robotics was a natural fit for him to teach. Mm-hmm. Where I would never put him in a poetry class. That would be terrible for the children
and for him.
And for him. I mean,
yeah, and for all of us involved. We do survey our kids, and sometimes like. We surveyed our kids in the fall this year, and they were like, we want to do chemistry.
Yeah.
And so we have a mom who's teaching kitchen chemistry in a session that we have coming up. She's going to do science experiments with food. And, that's great. We always have a lot of the kids love art, but we have some parents who are graphic designers. We had, a handcrafts person. She was a great artist in our co-op for a while. She did things like that. We have artists, photographers. Mm-hmm. They'll teach those classes. So a lot of times it's those kinds of things. Sometimes we have people who actually will find a curriculum, or they'll find a book, like a teacher's paid teachers unit study, and they'll go, this could be a great co-op class.
Yeah.
And they'll do that.
Or they'll volunteer it for somebody else. Like I found great curriculums. Like, I don't want to teach this, but it'd be great for somebody else that would like to.
Right. And we recycled ideas. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've done a few different rounds of anatomy. Mm-hmm. We've done a few different rounds of robotics. My dog is coming to visit Miss Jen.
the tip tap.
Yeah, if you hear those tip taps, that's doggy paws. We have, we've done a lot of different things that our kids really like, and multiple, because kids grow and they age out of that, and it's like, oh, here comes a new batch of 7 and 8 year olds who they really want to learn about the human body. We'll do it again.
Exactly. And we also get a lot of volunteers outside of our community that say, hey, you know what, I could teach, like the librarian's like, I could teach a writing class. Or the head of the 4-H Extension Center over there, she volunteers to teach coding and all kinds of other stuff for our little group. So, it's just wherever we can get ideas for classes, we take them.
Right. And and people don't overthink it is really good.
There's a million resources online too. You don't even have to create them yourself.
And like sometimes, hey, I really want to do a book club. And all that group is going to do is they're going to read books and talk about them and maybe do a little journaling.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's easy. And the kids love it. I mean, we did a book club. We've done book club a lot.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
And our kids love book club. And, you know, if you offer multiple choices and you're going to have something for everybody and multiple age groups, you know, it'll be great. Just kind of see what the kids want, see what you can do, see what you feel comfortable doing. Yeah. Works out pretty great.
All right, so that wraps up the top 10 tips we have for you this week.
Okay, so next week we are going to talk about how we divide up labor in our co-op. We're going to focus a little bit more on what we like to call community creation and what that looks like. So we're going to talk about the division of labor, what roles co-ops have for parents to contribute. So if you have a question, please connect with us on our Instagram, on our Facebook, or at thevillagehomeschoolers@gmail.com. We'd love to chat with you and talk to you about all the fun things that you're doing and answer questions you may have. We can always feature those at the end of our podcast. We encourage all questions. And if you are a homeschooler who is in a community or working on building a community, we'd love to chat with you. We'd love to interview you. We want to hear other voices on our podcast as well. So please reach out to us via social media or our email. So we'll see you then.
Bye.